program, which lasts approximately 18 months. So if you're looking for a program that is much shorter and will really give you kind of the most bang for your buck, Bowie State might be a program that you'll consider for undergrad and then go on for nursing. It looks like we have Jean that's joined us. Jean, would you like to add anything about nursing programs or your experience in nursing school? You're on mute. I think you attended an HBCU.
Yes.
Was that for undergrad? Can you share a little bit with some of our students?
Yes, hi. Sorry that I'm late, guys. I literally just hung up on an emergency call about some juicy stuff that's happening that you would get to experience once you enter healthcare. And it was COVID related.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, Tiffany, I missed your entire presentation. So I am going to need a little bit of guidance as to what you would like me to speak to.
Oh, certainly. I was just saying that there are about 41 HBCU nursing programs in the country, and that the #1 nursing program is at Bowie State. However, I know that you are a nurse. You did attend Southern University. I think that was for undergraduate program.
Correct.
And I just wanted to see if there was anything you might be able to add about a nursing program, maybe how long your program was and what your emphasis was in.
Yes. You're still sharing your screen. I don't know if it.
I am sharing my screen, and it just has all top 15 programs. Southern University is listed on that as well.
Got it. I wasn't sure if you wanted the students to know who they were speaking with, but that's okay.
Oh,
so
I can stop sharing.
Most university level nursing programs for entry level, hi guys, most of those are for 4-year programs. And so in a 4-year program at a university, you will eventually graduate with a bachelor's of science in nursing. That does not make you a nurse. You still have to take a state board exam in whatever state you choose to practice in. And what I can tell you about nursing school in general, regardless to what type of baccalaureate program you go to, whether it's at an HBCU or a predominantly white institution, is that it is very challenging. As a senior level nursing student for a university, your knowledge base is expected to be that of a first-year resident in medical school. Quite often, you will be doing rounds with the residents, and you will be expected to know just as much, if not more, actually, than they do. What I can tell you about nursing, though, at an HBCU, as Tiffany mentioned, I was enrolled in a nursing program at Southern University, is that the environment at an HBCU is such that the faculty is genuinely invested in your success. And so what you will find is even if you happen to be in a classroom in an auditorium type setting, the teachers are going to know who you are. Your professors will know who you are. They will know if you live on campus or off campus. They will pick up the phone and call you if you miss too many classes. That is not an experience that my nursing colleagues had who did not attend HBCUs. And so with the program being as challenging and as demanding as nursing is, that is a critically important element, because to have people that are invested in your success, especially if you are a student who is away from home. So you have a bit of an extended family who will hold you accountable. However, nursing is one of those fields that if you are not grasping the content all along the way, you will not be able to pass those state boards. And so you would have essentially spent some years of your life preparing and not being able to bring it to fruition and manifest it into a career.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Jean. That was wonderful. I don't know if we have any questions or if we have the ability to take questions or not, but I really appreciate your perspective on the nursing program that you attended. So just to close it out, I want to share one last slide. There we go. I want to share just one last slide with you. And this is a book that I read about 15 years ago. Very inspiring. And I don't know if you've heard of this book before, but it's called The Pact. This was in 2002 New York Times best-selling book. It's a nonfiction autobiography about three friends who grew up in a rough neighborhood in Newark, New Jersey. They made a pact in high school that not only were they going to attend college, but they were all three going to become doctors. And they did. They did it. Two received medical degrees and one a dental degree. And this book really just details some of their challenges and the sacrifices they had to that they went through to achieve a really far-fetched dream. So for those of you who are thinking or considering a profession in the medical or nursing field, I think that's wonderful. We are here to support you. And I just appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. That was amazing.
It was.
And thank you also as well, Jean.
Okay, well, next up, everyone, we have Miss Latia. She is going to share some very important information with you regarding financial literacy. Please pay attention because this is information that honestly, I wish somebody had shared with me before I went off to college. Okay, Miss Latia, if you're ready, please take it away.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So I'm going to share a presentation, but I just want to echo what Ms. Stacy just shared. I think there's a lot of information out there about finance and personal finance, but it's not something that's often discussed in great detail in our homes. And I think it's really important for us to have conversations about the things that are going to help enable our well-being, not just today, but for the long haul. So I'm by no means a financial planner or an advisor, but I do want to share some of the most important kind of basic foundational aspects of personal finance that are important as you are getting started. Right now, you have a clean slate. And so you can make better choices than we all made. And start early. That's the best way to do it. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So I'm going to share my screen and put into presenter mode. So there we go. Okay. So show me the money. So everything is about money. But I want to just take a minute to back up from money for a second. So you'll see in the agenda, the first thing I'm actually going to talk about is values, because it's really hard to make good money decisions if you don't have clarity on what your values are, what's important to you, why does it matter? You could be easily influenced by whatever's going on around you. And the more clarity you have on your values, the better you're able to make what we call SMART goals, which I'll talk about. We'll also get into the topic of budgets. I don't like that word, so I use a different term, spending plan. You can use whatever term you like. We'll talk more about that. Saving and investing, the art of delaying gratification. It's really important. Your financial reputation, credit, And then finally, the number one secret to reaching your goals. And that's probably true. This secret applies not just to personal finance. So we're going to save that for the end. Okay, so values. I put a bunch of values here on the screen for you all to see. And my hope was that this could be somewhat interactive. So I will go through the questions, and if folks just want to yell out their answers or put it in the chat, feel free to do that. And if someone could flag for me. So these are a bunch of values, and this is by no means an exhaustive list, but one of the things that is really important, and a personal finance advisor that I've worked with before has started doing, is talking about values before you set your goals, and picking or identifying 3 to 5 values that for you are the most important things for you that you care about. And so you see here, there's all kinds of values and there's many ways that this can go, but the point here that these are personal qualities that are very important to you and are indication of how you spend your money. So you could either think about how you spend your money and back into the values, or you could start fresh and say, okay, what's important to me? Where do people get their values? So childhood experiences, parents, friends, but also advertising, social media, life experiences. So again, really good to get a sense of what's important to you, because your goals are going to be an extension of your values. So does anyone have any values that they see on this page that resonate for them? Things that you think when you look at this, you say to yourself, this is really important to me and I want to shape my goals around this.
For me personally, family is definitely something that is very important to me. Making sure that now that I have a daughter, making sure that I have a nest egg set up for her future and things that I'm looking forward to, things that I want to do with us as a family. Traveling is involved with that. Just things that I want to be able to give her in life, and I want to be able to lead her down the path where she doesn't make the mistakes I made. You know, I got a credit card when I was in college because they offered me free pizza. I don't recommend that. You know.
Shared experience. I think we can all attest to that credit card offer. Anyone else want to talk about a value that's important to you? So for me, the things that jumped out for me were stability, wealth, family, education, and creativity. I think on some level, all of these kind of resonate for me. But if you're gonna be focused with your money and with your habits, it's important to at least figure out what's most important. And like Ms. Brittany shared, I also have a young daughter, so family and stability and long-term wealth are things that are important to me. But personally, creativity is very important to me and the ability to express myself. I probably would add travel into that too, just from the standpoint of exposure and experiences over things. So those are the ones that kind of rose to the top for me. So if we go to the next slide, we can talk about goals now. So you may have heard of the acronym SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. So that's a way of knowing you have a goal that you actually have a chance of achieving. And just to be transparent, I put some of my goals up here just so you could see what that looks like. Obviously, I'm 43 years old. I've been working for 20 something years. My goals are going to look very different from yours. I actually looked up in a recent survey of teenagers, and you should know 75% of you all say your number one goal is actually paying for college. So you can think about how that fits into values. That's telling me that education and maybe career and achievement are values that teens across the board take very seriously. But like Ms. Brittany shared, at my age and stage, I'm starting to think about retirement, my daughter's education. I want to buy a new home. I also am interested in investing in real estate and Black art specifically. So these are all things that are important to me and come out of the values that I just shared with you. But you'll notice that all of them are listed with timing. So by when, and having some sense of what they cost. I think a lot of times we talk about what we want to achieve, but we don't actually get really concrete about what it is going to take to achieve that, because sometimes it's scary. And to someone who looks at this and says, oh my God, $2 million, like, how are you ever going to do that? Well, it's possible, but it's not possible at all if you never ever name how much you need. You have to start with talking about how much it actually costs, and then you can back into your plan. So the other thing you might notice is that these goals are mapped out kind of informally in terms of short term, medium term, and long term. There are some things you might want to do over the next year. There are some things that might take you 2 to 3 years to save up for. And then there's some things that are really long term, but you should start thinking about them now. And the pace towards them might be slower because the time horizon is longer. So is there anyone who wants to share a goal that they have? And it could be short, medium, or long term, but a personal finance goal that they have.
One of my personal finance goals is to become debt-free, myself to become debt-free by the end of this year. I am proud to say that I officially have paid off my car as of yesterday.
Woo!
So I will not have a car note anymore moving forward.
Wow.
And I will be driving that car till the brakes fall off. Thank you very much, because I do not want a car note again. And then I would like to become a homeowner. Initially, I was going to say the end of the year, but I feel like it might be a little bit too egregious. So I would like to say by 2022. So that's mine.
Great. Anyone else? I know this is an ambitious group.
I'd like to invest in rental properties.
Say more.
Well, to set myself up for a comfortable retirement and help my daughter achieve her goals, I would like to purchase properties, perhaps even out of state, where the price tags aren't as high as, say, California, but would still generate monthly income from those rents collected. And I am actively working with a friend who's a realtor in another state to set myself up for that, because I'm not at a point where I can do that now today. But we actually spoke last summer about what my goals were. And we just kind of touched base on where I am with getting rid of certain debt to make sure I'm in the right position to take advantage of opportunities down the road. So I have my plan, I have a timeline, I have some contacts to kind of help guide me and hold me accountable. And yeah, that's what I would like to do.
I love that example, and I want to speak on that a little bit because it kind of ties to the next thing I was going to talk about, which is a vision board. So one thing that I think is important about personal finance is, although it's a lot of numbers and clarity and timelines and plans, you are a human being and you have a psychology. And something on paper versus something in real life can be two different things. So part of being able to achieve goals is learning about yourself and how to motivate yourself and get your head in a space where you can take the steps that you need to take. So the example that Ms. Tanisha just gave is, I want to do real estate rentals, but I'm not ready to do it today. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start meeting with a realtor, and I'm going to start talking about it, and I'm going to start learning about it. And I think that's really important, not just in terms of the steps you're taking, but the energy you're creating in your life that's basically telling you every day, we're going to do this. Everything you're doing is telling your psyche, you're going to do this. And so it is so. And a vision board, if you haven't heard of it, is a way of doing that. It's a way of, I don't want to say tricking your psyche, but really embedding these dreams and ambitions in your psyche in a way that wills them to be true. And it involves taking anything, an oak tag, a piece of cardboard, a bunch of magazines, and cutting out pictures and words that are inspiring to you, but also that represent the dreams that you have, and can show you on a daily basis and remind you when you're going to go online and order that next pair of sneakers, and your vision board is sitting right there with that house that you want. That can be an important and gentle reminder to stay focused. And the psychology behind all of this, I just think, is so important in order to be able to do this long term.
Miss Latia,
Yes.
it's Miss Lene.
Hi.
I just wanted to, hi. I just wanted to share that I really do think vision boards are so important. I myself had a tri-fold board. And so the centerpiece of the board had all the visuals that you just described. And on the left and the right sides, that's where you can put the steps that she was speaking of in terms of achieving each of those goals that you've set for yourself. And it just makes you feel so good when you can check them off and say, okay, I completed that step, or I achieved that goal. To actually see that keeps you motivated. And you need to have it present, like, so you can see it every day. Like I had mine in my room on my dresser. So it's a very valuable, powerful tool.
And I wanted to piggyback on what Miss Lene just said. I actually do practice vision boards as well. And I take a picture of it, and I actually have it as the background on my phone, so that when I, as I unlock my phone, not on the lock screen, on the screen that you unlock, because you don't want to, just leave it all out there for everybody to see. But I am able to see every day the vision that I have in place for my life and what I want when I pick up something that I actively am reaching for on a daily basis. And I find that to be extremely helpful.
Great. Okay. So moving on to the next slide, I call it No More Budgets, Making a Plan to Spend. This is all about psychology. So again, I said earlier, if you like the term budget, you can use it. For me, it doesn't work for my psychology, because budget feels like, oh, you can't do anything. All restraints. No, life is no fun. Everything is about like toughing it out, and just, I don't think for me that has worked. What has worked is making a plan to spend. So taking whatever name you want, whether it's a spending plan or budget, I'm going to get into 2 steps in doing that. So the first is keeping a money diary. So this could be literally a 99-cent store spiral tiny notebook that you keep in your bag, and you write down every single penny that you spend. And it could also be an Excel spreadsheet. You can also use an app. There are tons of apps that you can use, like Mint, and there are others where you can keep tally of what you're spending on a regular basis. I can tell you that since 2005, I have kept a money diary, and I can tell you how much money I've spent in every category for the last 15 years. It helps me to develop a really strong and realistic spending plan, because I know my brain wants to say, I only spent $50 on Amazon last month. But my diary is saying, no, 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 that was more like $200. You got to get real. So having a diary, I think, also it's kind of like, once I see that, then the next month I want to make it a little bit lower. And that it takes awareness to be able to make those adjustments over time. But when you're thinking about your budget, you do want to base it in what your real life is like. The problem comes when you don't do that and you try to cut so much that then you reach a point where it's like, "Ugh, I can't live like this. Let me just go out to eat, or let me just go buy this sweater," or whatever it is. And making it realistic and incorporating your goals into it means it's a privilege to get money in your life. That energy, that income that you generate is a privilege. And it's also a privilege to be able to spend it, to have the money to pay your cell phone bill, to have the money to buy the clothes that you need, to have the money to buy the food that you need. So when you look at it like that, you are making conscious choices, not, "Oh, I gotta pay this thing, I gotta pay this thing." This is what it costs to be a self-sufficient and self-supporting, financially healthy adult. So the suggestion here is to track your spending for a month or two. Like I said, it could be in a journal or in an app. And after you have a good idea of what you're spending in each category, you can create a spending plan. I'm actually gonna switch to a different document, just because I think it's important to show examples so people can see what I'm talking about. So just looking at your screen, this is a sample teen spending plan. I'm many years away from this, so this may not be as detailed as yours will be, but you'll see at the top, income. So what do you get? Allowance? Do you have a job? Whatever. I just put in $500 here just for argument's sake. Interest income from the savings account. Let's just say you don't have one right now. So every month, this is monthly, estimated $500 for income. And then let's talk about expenses. So you see the first thing, and I'll talk about this again, and I'll talk about it 100 times. The first expense is to yourself. It's to pay yourself. Savings account, not to pay Verizon, not to pay whoever, to pay yourself. So whatever you're deciding to save, let's say $50, you would estimate that every month. I'll leave out taxes here because if you're not getting a paycheck, that may not be relevant. If you are getting a paycheck, it is relevant, and pay attention to that, but we'll come back to it. Let's say you're giving your parents money for rent, your cell phone, $100. Every month you're spending $200 on grocery, snacks, and food. I'm just putting in numbers here so you can see what it looks like. And you go throughout this whole thing, guesstimating for yourself, what do I spend in a month? And then you have your total expenses. You do not want your total expenses to be greater than your total income. When you have this, that is your plan. And that's what you are going to go forward with in the month. So every month, on the last day of the month, usually, or maybe even the second to last day, because I get a paycheck, I can predict what I'm earning. I make my spending plan for the next month. And a lot of the categories are the same, but there are some things that I know in May, if we weren't on lockdown right now, I'd be doing something for Mother's Day. So my line item for a restaurant or gifts might be higher in May for that reason. So I actually think through the entire month and look at it against these expenses to think about what's coming up so that I can plan accordingly for each month. So if you go back to the top of this, there's actual. So remember when I said keep the diary? This is exactly how I do it. I keep the diary and then the totals go in here. So whatever I end up spending, if I paid my cell phone bill on May 1st, I put the number $100 in here. So you can see, here's what I budgeted, here's what I said I'm gonna spend on, and here's actually how much. And then the last column is the difference. So every month you can see way over my spending plan, way under, just right. After doing this over and over and over again, you're going to get really good at getting underneath, hopefully getting underneath your income, not spending more than your income. But more importantly, you're going to really get to know yourself. You're going to really get clarity on your priorities. And this spending plan should match your values. So if you're saying, I value education, I value career, I value long-term wealth, but all of your expenses are clothes, eating out, whatever, your spending plan doesn't match your values. And so either those aren't the things you value, or you're not spending accordingly to what you want for your future. Any questions before we go back to the presentation? I just want to make sure I'm not going too fast for folks.
Miss Latia, I see a few, excuse me, a few questions in the chat.
In the Zoom?
Yes.
Oh, how do I? Okay, here we go. Can you speak to what would be considered good debt? Okay, so this is a good question. And honestly, we didn't have debt in this presentation. There's a bunch of categories that are not in this presentation, so forgive me, that I'm happy to answer any questions off the rip. So good debt, there's a lot of debate about this. The way I look at it is good debt is debt that is allowing you to finance assets. So if debt is borrowing money. So if you're borrowing money to purchase a home, that's probably a good debt, because the history of our society over time shows that your home is likely to appreciate and likely to grow, and you can also sell it to cover the amount that you've borrowed. So that's really the way you look at it. Solvency is about only borrowing things that can be covered by something. So similarly, I think people think about education in the same way. So if you're taking out loans for college, and there is some debate about this recently, but if you're taking out loans for college, the idea is that you are investing in yourself as an asset, and therefore the amount of money and earning potential that you will have going forward will more than cover not only that debt, but then some, and allow you to reach the other financial goals that you have. In terms of how much you should save for yourself, I'm going to get into that in a second. So I'll table that in 1 second. And then, is good debt to build their credit at oh, I see. There's a question about what is good debt to build their credit at a young age. So credit, I'm also going to talk to in a second. So we'll get there. Let's table those two. Any other questions about spending plan? And I'm happy to share this afterwards so that people can have that as a resource. Okay, so let's go back here. So I talked a little bit about this on the saving front. Paying yourself first is super important. The rule of thumb that you hear the most is 10%, at least 10% of whatever you're generating, whatever your income is, you should be putting aside. Depending on what your goals are, some people might say 20%. I think it also depends on your age. So the younger you are, the less you can do and still be okay. And I'll explain that in a minute when we talk about compound interest. Separate accounts, I think, is a really important thing to talk about too. It works for some people and definitely works for me, and that is saving in separate accounts. And this is a psychological thing as well. So you could have one savings account with a bunch of money in it, and then, you know, if your car breaks down, you fix your car out of that. If you have an unexpected medical expense, you pay out of that. Whatever it is, somebody passes away in your family, God forbid, you got to buy a flight to go somewhere. I like to keep a couple of accounts that are saving. So one is the emergency fund, and the party line about emergency funds is anywhere from 3 to 6 months expenses. So whatever your spending plan is, let's say you spend $500 a month, you want to have at least $1,500 in your saving emergency fund for whatever comes up. I think it's, for me, there's a separate account for a down payment for a house. That's not an emergency. That's actually something I'm specifically saving for. It's a big big lift. It might take some time, and there may be some different strategies even on how I'm doing that, but I would put that separate. If you're saving up to buy a car, I would put that separate. There are people I know who literally have multiple savings accounts for specific things so that they can get $20 and put a little in each one of them. You do what works for you. For some people that doesn't work, they want to tackle one thing at a time. I like to do something in the middle. I don't have 20 accounts, but I don't just have one. And then in terms of a tip that I was told a long time ago around savings, which is probably blasphemy in this day and age of Apple Pay, credit cards, debit cards, etc., is cash rules. You spend less money when you use cash. Why? Because when you see the amount of green going down in your wallet, you want to stop the hemorrhaging. You want it to stop. But if you don't see the money coming out, oh, put it on the card. Oh, swipe, 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 swipe. It becomes so easy to just constantly swipe. This is like proven psychology. And I think it's really true, which is why there's a method called envelope method that some people use around spending plans. So if you take that spending plan that we just went through, and you have your $500 for the month, you put the amount for each category in each envelope. This really forces you to stay honest. If you have $50 in your envelope for eating out, and then you decide to go to, I don't know, Ruth's Chris on day one of the month, and you spend that $50, that's it. What that teaches you is, I'm probably not going to do that again. I need to be smarter about how I do this, or, maybe I reallocate appropriately, but you can't. It forces you to be really conscious about how you're spending your money. And the only way to really do that is if you're actually handling cold, hard cash. So I recommend that even if you don't want to do it forever, every now and then dip into a cash only mode just to see what it feels like to operate with cash only, because it'll show you a lot about your spending habits. Any questions there? Or comments, and if anyone else wants to join in and add their personal experience, please do.
I would like to piggyback on what you mentioned earlier about the multiple savings accounts for different things. I personally have started utilizing that the last few years, and it seems to be a system that's really been helpful for me. I use actually an app on my phone, and it's called Capital with a Q. And it's QAPITAL. And what it allows you to do is you can set up a savings account for different things in the one app. So you can I have a savings account for my sorority expenses. I have a savings account for things I want to buy for my daughter. Like if I want to get really cute outfits or bows and I don't want to use other money. I have a savings account for paying down certain debts that I want to make sure that I pay that off, but I don't want to necessarily use the money that I have to live off of. I have a savings account for charity donations, all those different things. And it lets you put a really cute picture on it. So when you see what it is you're still saving for, it reminds you. Like I have a home buyer tab. So it shows you a nice, pretty house and everything. So every time you look at it, you're like, oh gosh, I really want that. So you're reminded that you want to save that money. And it allows you to set up rules where you can have it automatically come out of your account, or you can set it up to come out of your paycheck at a certain time, or you can have it to where I have a rule that if I spend a certain amount of money, if I spend $50 on Amazon, $15 has to go into my savings account because I spent $50 on Amazon. So that will help me in one, not shopping so much. And two, if I do shop so much, I'm penalized, but I'm still helping myself in the future. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That was something that I think is super helpful, and you should try to give it a try. And it's free.
I had an interesting way of saving as well. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or ladies, I apologize. So what I did was, and it's a little bit more risque, but so I just had a savings only for an emergency fund. So I only put away, say, whatever I thought was let's just come up with a number. Say I thought $1,000 was good for an emergency fund. So what I would do is I took away things that I normally would want. For example, my Starbucks, or I decided to do this is when I was trying to purchase a house very specifically, actually. Instead of getting my nails done, I would do them myself. So I did it for like 2 years. I put away an X amount of money in for emergency fund that was accessible to me in my savings account. Any other money I actually chose to put into my basically my account where I invest in stocks. And so I've decided to put all that money there because the rate at which I was going to earn money, even though I know I was taking a risk because it's stocks, but I took the risk knowing that, or believing that confidently, that I would make more money off of that money just sitting there on those stocks that I invested in versus sitting in a savings account, which really didn't have a very high interest rate. And quite honestly, I forgot that I had that money in there because it wasn't in my bank accounts at all, right? So a few years down the line, when I did need some money, I remember, oh my gosh, I have this money that's been sitting here for like 5 years, and it had made a lot more money than had it been in a savings account. So that's actually what I ended up doing.
Miss
Thank you.
Latia.
Yes.
Hi, it's Jean. I did want to underscore how effective carrying cash is. And this is a practice that I had done years ago, but to make it applicable for the audience, for our audience who should try this method when they get to college, if you, if you have a work study or some other source of income, if you put in your savings account what you're not going to use and only carry an exact amount of money that you know you'll need for bills, things like gas, maybe not necessarily your cell phone bill, but where you have to have a certain amount of money on hand. So if you have, say, gas and going to the laundromat and things like that, and then however much you want to allot yourself for your entertainment, because it's really important when you're in college to have some balance. And if you're going to want to go to a party and it's $15 to get in, and then you might, want to go and have breakfast with your friends afterward, and that's another $15. You know that you need to set aside at least $30 for that, or whatever it is, that you want to allocate for yourself on a regular basis to obtain some life work balance, and work meaning school. Once that money starts to dwindle, as Miss Latia actually mentioned earlier, you become a lot more discerning about whether or not you want to actually spend $2 on a Coke in the grocery store when you stop to get gas. And then you look at it and say, you know what, I'm good. I got a 6-pack in my fridge in the dorm. So that was something specifically many years ago when I was a single parent and a brand new nurse. It helped me substantially. I mean, I paid all my bills in cash, and mind you, that was before the online accessibility. However, it helped me a lot, and I highly would advocate for you guys to try it when you get to college, if not before.
Thank you. Both of those comments, Ms. Sauda and Ms. Jean, I appreciate it. As you can see, there's a lot of different ways to handle your money. It's just important for you to figure out what works best for you. And that's what I was talking about earlier about like getting to know yourself and your psychology so that you can learn what's going to be most effective for you. One thing I didn't mention, I forgot to mention about savings, is the savings accounts. Right now, online accounts seem to be offering the best rates. First of all, there's a website called bankrate.com where you can find out a lot of information about interest rates and for savings accounts and other things. But Ally, ALLY, Ally Bank, I've used them before. It's so easy. You'd never have to go to an actual physical plant, as well as Capital One, which I've also used, and there are others. This is not by any means meant to be an endorsement, just sharing some thought starters for you as far as thinking about saving and where you can do that to get the best rates. Okay. No more questions in the chat. We'll move on. Okay, investing, the art of delaying gratification. So Ms. Sauda started to talk about this a little bit, so I'm glad she brought this up. And that's about investing in the market. So we could do a 2-day retreat on the markets, on stocks, on investing, securities, how to choose them, the thought process about that. And there's a lot of learning to do in that space. I think there's one concept that I want to make sure to share with this group, because I think the teams on this call are the most able to take advantage of this concept because of your age, and that is compound interest. So if you think about an interest rate basically determines how much money a bank is going to pay you to keep your funds in their account. So when I was just mentioning Ally Bank and Capital One, I think their interest rates right now are like 1.5%. So if you keep X amount of dollars in that account, they are going to add 1.5% to that for keeping your money in the account, depending on the compounding term. So if it's an annual compounding interest, that means that interest is paid once a year. If it's quarterly, it means it's paid once every 3 months. So if interest rate is you getting money back, compound interest means your money's going to grow faster, because interest is calculated not only on the money you put in, but also on the interest you've earned, your accumulated interest over time. So one of the great things about compound interest is that it can grow your money automatically. And because you're earning interest on your interest, it takes on a life of its own, even if you never add another penny to the principal that you've started out with. So I'm going to show an example of that just so you can see what I mean. It's a little bit of a goofy diagram and it may be hard to read, so I'll explain it. So this is called the story of Jack and Blake. So when Jack turned 21, he decided to start investing $200 a month every year for 9 years. Pause. So when I got my first job, I was 21 years old, and there was a woman, Jessie, who sat next to me, and her parents actually encouraged her to do this, and she started doing this when she was 21. And when I tell you what I'm about to say to you is true, it's 100% true. And I know people who have done this. I didn't do it, so I'm telling you because I should have done it. So when Jack turned 21, he started investing $200 a month every year for 9 years. At age 30, he stopped investing altogether. Doesn't put another new dime in the account at all. His friend Blake started a little later. He started investing $200 a month every month, starting at 30. So he started 9 years later, not bad, 9 years later at 30, and he did it all the way to age 67. So Jack invested for 9 years, Blake invested for 37 years. So at age 67, who do you think had more money in their account? Well, if you look at this chart, Jack ended up having $2,547,150. And his only input was the first 9 years, which amounted to $21,600. So that $21,600 got him to $2,500,000, let's just say. And this is to Ms. Sauda's point earlier, which is when you putting your money in the market, over time, yes, there are recessions. Yes, the market does dip. But when you think about it for the long haul, and over the long haul, it's been proven that the average rate of return, the stock market is 8%. over time, you will make money. And that's even if you stopped after this first 9 years like Jack did. Blake, he invested over 38 years and he put in 91,000. So he had to do 70,000 more than Jack and for a much longer period of time. And his return is $1.1 million less. So if you take nothing else away from this concept, it's to start early, even if it's small. There's so many vehicles out here now. There are young people in my office right now who've downloaded an app called Robinhood, and they have a contest where they just buy one stock share every month. And it sounds like nothing, but it adds up over time. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine whose son is turning 21 next week, and she's going to hand him $26,000. And it's completely from the fact that his grandfather bought him 4 shares of Berkshire Hathaway when he was a baby and did nothing else. So think about this concept of compound interest, and remember that when you start young, you don't need a lot. If you start late, you actually have to invest a lot more. Ms. Sauda was gonna chime in with something else.
This is just something that I actually teach a lot of young people too when it comes to investing. A lot of times they ask, well, what should I invest in, right? Because people, you're just starting off, you don't know. So one rule of thumb that's a great tip is, a lot of times as a young person, I will tell, for example, my godson, I say, well, invest in you. And what that means is, when you are a teenager, teenagers like what? Cell phones, or they like sneakers, or right, exactly. So I'm saying, why don't you own the very thing that you love to purchase? So for my godson, he loves buying, let's say, Nikes. That's all he does, is he will find some Jordans or something like that. So technically, I told him, even if you own just a little bit of stock in that company, you are technically putting money right back into your pockets. Every time you buy that pair of sneakers, you're actually investing in something that you own. And so that gave him a good perspective in terms of because I made him pick his own stocks. So he literally just went through, and everything that he uses, whether it's an Apple phone or sneakers or anything, those particular companies, that's where he decided to put his money, even though it wasn't a lot of money, but at least he felt good about the fact that when he did buy a pair of sneakers or got the latest iPhone, he was actually making money, right? He was making money back. So that's just something good for, I think, young people to know as well, in terms of investing in themselves if they don't really know what stocks to do at this age.
Thanks for sharing that. I think this is a really, really important point, because it can be really intimidating to try and figure out, well, everybody's telling me to buy stocks, what do I buy? And you will see the best investors will tell you to buy what you know. So like Ms. Sauda said, if you know the latest video game that's coming out, what's the parent company of that game? Are they public? Can you buy stock in that company? Same thing, sneakers, whatever it is, buy what you know, because then you're less likely to be out of your realm of understanding, and you can follow it and track it, and learn the stock market through things that are familiar to you and that you like. Anyone else want to comment on investing? I saw a couple of comments in the Zoom chat around other apps that folks can use to be able to dip their toe into this a little bit.
Hi, Latia, it's Brittany again. I just wanted to also mention an app called Stockpile. It's similar to Robinhood, where you can just get portions of a share, and it's easier. It's a little, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit more user friendly. But you can just buy a little piece of a share versus getting the whole share, just like you can with Robinhood. But I also have both, so you can do that too. I just have it to where in my mind, mentally, I say that all the money I make with this goes towards my daughter's education, and then I say that the other money's curated from this other one goes to a different pot. And I think that it's something that would be helpful for you all to check out.
Thank you. So that was Stockpile, in addition to Robinhood. I haven't tried that one yet. I'm gonna take a look at that. Anyone else? Okay. So, wait, I'm getting one more thing in the chat. Oh, TD Ameritrade, which I also really like. Yes, TD Ameritrade is another option as well. And I think the important thing here is you don't want to be paying a lot of fees. So I think all of the suggestions folks are giving help you avoid that. Okay, credit cards and credit score. So there's a lot of talk about credit. Credit is very important. I think some of the things we talked about will make your reliance on credit a little bit less. The credit is important because when you receive credit, you're getting an advance on money to purchase items. So if you use a credit card to buy food, the thing is you're going to have to pay that money back. And if you don't do it within a certain amount of time, it's going to be more than the amount that you actually ended up paying. So if it costs $10, but you are paying your credit card bill every month for 3 months, you're going to end up paying $30, let's say, for something that was actually only worth $10. So one golden rule that people talk about all the time is just like, if you're going to use credit, to make sure you pay off your balances in full every month so that you're not paying interest. And just think about like all the things we talked about, getting interest on your savings, investing in the stock market, to then be losing money by paying interest on your credit cards doesn't make sense. So this is why being free of credit card debt is really important. And it does contribute to your credit score. So your credit worthiness is determined by your FICO score. So it's a rating that you get. And every time you use credit, that company is reporting to the credit bureaus whether or not you're paying on time. So you can actually order your credit report online for free and see what your credit score is and what those reports look like. And sometimes they make mistakes. And so it's important to check your score at least once a year. Some people do it more. My dad is somebody who's very obsessed about credit score and privacy and scams. So he's constantly checking his credit. But I think that the main point is to make sure that there are no mistakes on there, because you can then write in to have them removed, but also to see what your score is so you know what you're working with and how you're being rated. The reason,
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
The reason why FICO scores are important is because they help determine interest rates. This is like the #1 way that it comes up in real life when you're trying to finance a car, you're trying to finance a house. But even more, I mean, even if you're not buying something, if you're renting, a lot of rental units check your credit score. Some employers check your credit score because they're trying to see the level of responsibility. And so it's important to think about this, not like, oh, one day, I'll care about credit. It's really important to start to think about it now, because it can impact what you're able to do and how much you're able to pay for things. Was someone going to jump in?
Yes, I'm sorry, Sauda. I actually just wanted to share with you one thing that I learned. And this is all fresh in my mind because I just bought my first property in 2018. And so I wanted to speak to the point as far as, I agree with you. It is definitely good to pay off your debt as quickly as possible. But I just wanted to share the flip side of what happened, though, just so you hear. So prior to buying a house, I literally paid off everything. And what happened with me is when I tried to buy a house, I didn't have any credit. And so what I ended up having to do was actually wait. Instead of paying everything off in 30 days, I actually had to pay it off in 60 days because you needed the actual whatever you spent. So for example, what I did is every time I went to the grocery store in order to build my credit, because I didn't have any, I just started using a credit card at the grocery store, right? Because I knew I needed to buy food. But instead of paying it off in 30 days, I would pay it off in 60 days. That way, that bill actually hit my credit score. So it actually showed that I had credit, because, and then of course I would pay it off. But if you pay it off too soon, it gets paid off before it actually hits your score. So that's just something for people to think about when they're actually in the process of, you know, making a big purchase where they need credit.
And that's a great point, Soda. What I had wanted to do is discuss what happens after you actually pay off your credit card, because one of the issues too is you have to make sure that you're actively using your credit card. Because I thought that me paying off my credit card would have been great for my credit score, because I paid all this stuff off. I'm like, whoa, getting rid of out of debt. But they actually closed my account, which ended up dinging my credit score because they said I wasn't using the card after a certain amount of months, and they have the right to do so. And you actually can't get your credit card back if they do decide to cancel your account because of non-usage. So as much as it's true that you need to pay off your card, you need to at least swipe it a couple times to keep it still an active account, or they will close it, and that will also negatively affect your credit score.
Yes, all true. So to Ms. Sauda's point, thank you for adding that in. It's a 30-day cycle. So if you do something inside of the 30 days, it doesn't hit. So that's the way it operates. And then to Ms. Brittany's point, for sure, keeping active accounts open and a credit history is a big part of your credit score, which I'll talk about in a second. So thank you for mentioning that as well. I want to make sure we have time for any questions. So this is just quickly showing, sorry for the blurry picture, the FICO score range. So you can see here 720 and up is considered excellent, 690 to 719 is considered good, 630 to 689 average, and below 629 and below is considered poor. And the way these are categorized and determined is as follows. So 35% of your score is determined by your payment history, which means paying on time, not being late. 30% is about amounts owed. So if you have a $1,000 limit on your credit card and you spend $999 every month, but you pay the minimum, which let's say is $150 a month, your credit score is still suffering because you're using up too much of your available credit. And if you have multiple cards and you're using them the maximum amount, that has a negative effect on your card. So you always want to try, and the rule that I've seen is 30% utilization. You don't really want to be maxing out your cards because it actually decreases your score. Conversely, if you can get your amounts down, even if you're not paying them off, it can have a positive effect on your score. 15% of your score is determined by length of credit history. So that speaks to a little bit of what Ms. Brittany was just sharing. You don't want to have a card for 5 years and then pay it off, get it closed because you just lost that length of time, which really helps your score. I've had an American Express card since, I don't know, over 20 years. So that length of time actually contributes to my credit score. And then 10% of this is, it says new credit. So that means every time you apply for credit, and there's nuance with this. So it's not every single thing. And there are some ways to get around this, but essentially what this is saying is they don't want you to be applying for credit all the time. That's not the sign of a credit-worthy person. And so when you apply for new credit, you have to be really careful about that because, because you can get dinged and you'll see your score drop a couple of points. So this happens when you're like shopping for a car. You try not to do like 100 different financing models every time you're going around dealership to dealership. You have to have a sense so that you're not running your credit a bunch of times. And then 10% is the credit mix, so different credit vehicles that you have. I just want to be clear that credit cards aren't the only thing on your credit score. So there are other things that get retorted, like your car note, for example. Any way that you are financed and given credit is reported. So it's not just cards. I think that's important. Anyone else want to share on credit scoring?
I just wanted to share one way to boost your credit that that we recently discovered when we were trying to get in the process of buying the house. You can actually add your utilities to your credit reporting, and then that will help boost your score. So that is something that you can do if you don't really have other areas to show credit. You can say, okay, I have this one credit card that's $300, and then I pay this phone bill, or I pay this DWP bill or whatever at my apartment. Or living at home with your parents, you give a certain amount of direct deposit money for utilities to them, and they'll be able to add that to your score, and then it'll show your history of payment.
Great. It's a good tip. A couple of other things about managing credit. So the interest rate on credit cards is really important. When you go to college, you're going to get all these offers in the mail saying, hey, 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 get this credit card. You have to read the fine print. What is the interest rate on the credit card? A lot of times they'll offer you a card with a very low or zero interest rate for the first year. Get you in good. You're going 10, 11, 12 months.
For pizza.
Ordering pizza, buying pizza.
That's what got me.
And literally at that 12th month, after that 12th month, the interest rate shoots up, and you're not really paying attention anymore because you're used to the card and you've had it for a while. This is how they get you. So you have to read the fine print. And then the other thing is about co-signing. So we have a joke in my family. My last name is Curry. Growing up, my aunts used to always say to me, you know, Currys don't co-sign, right? You know, Currys, we don't co-sign. And I didn't get it as a kid. I'm like, what are you talking about? But now I know what they what they meant, which is when someone has not so great credit, sometimes they are able to make purchases on credit as long as someone with good credit co-signs on it for them. The fine print on co-signing is that you are responsible for that debt if they don't pay it. So if that person who has poor credit doesn't pay the car note or doesn't pay the cell phone bill or whatever it is that you co-signed on, you are responsible for paying that bill 100%. And Judge Mathis is not going to get you out of that. So you have to think about, like, is this worth it in the long term? Is this the kind of help that I want to be offering? Or you could just say, look, I don't co-sign, just like my aunts taught me. Currys don't co-sign. Okay. I think we're coming to the last bit. So the number one secret to reaching your goals is habits, which is not like really a secret, and it's not like some groundbreaking idea, but it kind of is. So everybody loves making a list of their goals. It's fun to make your vision board, all of those things, but it's the little things that you do every single day that amount to those goals. So when you see somebody, my daughter actually loves to watch Lizzo videos, and Lizzo talks about this all the time, how she's not an overnight success, how she's been grinding for many, many, many years and perfecting her craft and going to school to play instrument. Like, habits are what get you success, and that's not just personal finance, that's life. So, but in terms of the things that we've been talking about, the number one habit that I think is important in personal finance is automated saving. You can automate your savings if you have an online bank account and savings account. We didn't get into bank accounts a lot today, but that's one of the ways that I found, and I think Ms. Sauda mentioned this too, about like not seeing the money. So when you automate, again, this is about psychology. If you don't see the money, you're not thinking about it, so you're not thinking about spending it. Right now, for my retirement, I invest in a 401k through my job. So I don't see the money when I get paid every month or twice a month. I don't see that money. And then at the end of the year or every quarter, when I get the statement, I'm like, oh my God, okay, I saved that. And maybe it wasn't like me going in my wallet and putting pennies or dollar bills in the piggy bank like you see in this picture, but that is saving. That's getting there. That's getting to the goal. So all the ways you can think about creating the habits that help you actually reach these goals. And I can't tell you what they will be for you. I'm just giving you an example. Like for me, like I said, every month I make a spending plan. Every week I tally up my numbers and keep track of how much I've been spending. So those are some of my habits. I have a regular meeting with my financial planner. For you all, it could be as simple as, again, money diary, spending plan, saving. Those are the types of things that help you get there. And I don't know if anyone else wants to share any of their habits that they do in order to help them reach their financial goals, or what habits you might need to create.
Miss Latia, I just want to say that was an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. I personally would like to implement some of your practices because I don't create a monthly spending plan. I do make a general plan for kind of like the year, and I usually do like a 6-month check-in, and then my husband and I have our joint accounts that we monitor on with an app that's actually called Honeydew. So we use that so you can actually see what's in each other's accounts, what's being spent on, and what needs to be due. And it sends you reminders like this bill is due. So we know, okay, who's handling this bill? Am I handling it or are you handling it? So that's been helpful that we implemented in our relationship. But I definitely want to be a little bit more strict on, you know, how much is going out and how much is coming in, and making sure that I reserve money for myself. So I just want to say thank you so much for that insight on that area of finance.
Thank you.
Ms. Latia, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I did think that it's important. You brought something up that we probably need to emphasize a little bit more in terms of the importance of saving money while you're in school. I wanted to ask some of the adults on the call if they could name one expense that was unexpected, that fell in their laps while they were a student, because though, you know, there are certain things that we students kind of expect. Well, I know I might have to be able to buy a hamburger or pay for books and things like that. But I distinctly remember that it was very jarring for me when I had 2 roommates and one of them couldn't come up with her share of the rent.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And so
I was going to say the same thing also.
Yeah, so you mentioned car repairs and, you know, maybe like flat tires and things like that. But I think that by us sharing some real life experiences, it could put things in better perspective for the students.
I know for me, I had a situation where I had a roommate who could not make her rent. And I was working at the time. I had a job at Guess clothing store, and I also had an internship that was paid, but it was paid paid. And I was so stressed out, like, how am I going to get this money set up and this and this? And I realized actually doing the envelope system, I had enough money to be able to pay and cover that. But what we ended up doing was we ended up having to find a whole new roommate and like all this other stuff and try to sublease. We actually subleased our living room in the house that we were renting. So we had a whole new roommate to be able to cover the cost to make our friends, our roommate who was my friend, her bills cheaper. So we ended up gaining another roommate, and that's kind of how we figured out how to cover the cost financially with stuff, because she couldn't pay for the rent and she couldn't pay for the utilities because she had lost her job abruptly, I guess. And then I had another, I was responsible for paying for all my books. That was kind of the agreement that I had with my parents, where they covered some of my other bills. So like they paid my phone bill, but I paid for all the books I needed for classes. And then I went to one class and the book for the class was almost $500. and I was not prepared because I just had my other class. It was $20. So where did this $500 come from?
Miss Brittany, there are some other examples we see from YouTube.
Miss Kira, can you read the example?
Yeah, so from YouTube, there's an example where one said that they had to replace all 4 tires on their car, and that was an unexpected, expense that they had there. So.
Yikes. Yeah, Murphy will do it to you.
Yeah, I had the similar thing with the books. I think we all know we have to pay for books, but you don't know what they're going to cost till you get into the semester. So similar thing. And I think also like having to fly home for an emergency was one as well. So there are lots of things that pop up. And I think to Ms. Jean's point, like the importance of saving even a little something can be so comforting when things happen that are jarring, to kind of minimize your stress, because you're going to be managing school, managing exams, worrying about your grades, and to have that added stress can be really difficult. So it is an important skill to have and manage while you're in college as well.
Lucia, this is Tiffany. Can I make a comment on that as well?
Sure.
I think it's also really important to set aside some money for entertainment. It's unrealistic to think that as a college student, you won't have things that you want to attend, and you shouldn't have to pull that out of, rob Peter to pay Paul to do those things. If you kind of have a plan in advance, and I'm going to save so much money per month or per week for whatever might come, maybe it's a step show or something else that may be coming up. There's always some kind of spring fling thing or something, but just have a little money set aside so that you don't have to dig into your other funds for that. I know my college roommate and we had I'm embarrassed to say, a Taco Bell fund, but really it was just a big jar by the front door, and if you ever had any loose change, you just put it in there, and then at the end of each semester we'd count out our money and have a nice meal or something like that. But I think those small things can even add up.
And if you are interested in joining a fraternity or sorority, you definitely need to save for that. Even if you have somebody who is willing to pay the fees that it will take to for initiation, you're still going to want to have some gear and all of the cool things that come along with being a member of an organization. So there's that as well. I agree with Tiffany in that you want to have a well-rounded experience in college. It's not just about growing academically. It's about growing as a human, and you don't want to miss out on those type of experiences because you can't afford to go. Lastly, if you're going to be that saver and that person who is really diligent and on top of managing their money, don't tell everybody, because most people are not going to have these nuggets that you guys have. And, they will come to you and want you to loan them money that you'll never see again. And I'm not saying to be rude or be, a Scrooge about it, but that's your business. Your money is your business. It's not other people's business, and they're not the ones making the sacrifice. So keep your money close. Keep it to yourself.
I would also like to add that in addition to saving for activities like joining a fraternity or sorority or other type of organization, you may want to travel abroad. There are so many opportunities that will be open to you if you plan for it, if you save for it, and if you just go for it. So you just never know what will present itself to you. And I'm speaking from experience. I had no idea going into college that I would spend a semester abroad, and the opportunity fell in my lap. And thankfully, I had a job on campus where I was able to save for it before that semester began. But you just want to be mindful of having, those, I guess, an open mind and having those buckets where you're saving for those opportunities.
Can you say where you went?
I did. So our campus was in Florence, Italy. We stayed in we stayed in a villa, and the villa was hundreds of years old. I can't even remember like what century it was built in, but we stayed in the Florence countryside. We were able to my tuition was paid for because I had scholarships and grants and loans, but I still had to pay for my airfare. I had to pay for my Eurail train ticket. So we took the train everywhere. We were only in school 4 days a week, but that gave me Friday, Saturday, Sunday to hop on a train and travel all over Italy, outside of Italy to Spain. I went as far east as Prague, so Poland, the Czech Republic. And I certainly didn't show up on day one knowing, oh, this is something, but I'm glad that I at least had the habits in place to save for that. So that's where I was. I was in Italy, and then from there was able to travel to other countries in Europe. Oh, and we spent a week in London. Nice. That's when I maxed out my credit card. Let me tell you. Maxed out that card and came back home, and Pansy Grimmett, my mother, was like, no, ma'am. And I'm calling back home using my credit card. So, so many good lessons, people. Also, shout out to Lewis. I saw your name on here. So just wanted to share that.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much to the beautiful ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, Tau Beta Omega chapter, for your participation and input, particularly to our speakers, Ms. Tiffany Sims and Latia Curry. I learned a lot, and I sure hope that the students and or parents who joined and participated learned something as well. If you missed any of this, you will be able to view it again via YouTube on Wooten Center's YouTube page. I'm so grateful that we've been allowed to participate in the CAP program with the Wooten Center for the past 3 months. And we are actually about to go on our hiatus for the summer. However, we are already planning for the fall. So I hope that you guys are going to enjoy your summer break as well, but come back refreshed, because in September, we're going to come back with financial aid. We're going to be doing a session on how to write your personal statement, and another session on how to select a college. So we have some really good topics coming up in the fall. We're already in planning stages. We're looking forward to doing it, and I hope that you all join us again in the fall. I do believe we may have some seniors at Wooten Center who will be going off to college. I will follow up with you, Ms. Christelle, so that we can get their names and possibly find a way to stay in touch with those students. And just be sure to let me or any one of us know if you need help, if you have questions, if there's anything that you need that we can help you with. We are here to help you and support you with your college endeavors. Does anyone else have any closing remarks or any comments before we let them go?
I would just say everything was awesome. I have notes here from you ladies just sharing. And so, my grandmother, she told me, you spend a little, you save a little, you invest a little. And so absolutely, you want to be balanced, and that security that you have with knowing that you have savings is it's wonderful, and it's something that you can continue for the rest of your life, and even for your generations to come. So starting now, and not feeling like, oh, I don't have this whole big much to save. If you need to start little and grow from there. But thank you all for sharing. This was wonderful. And I know, look, it's going to benefit me too.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Good night.
All right.